Oh, didn't actually mean to hit it then. Right, welcome back to episode 27 of the WPD podcast. We have fresh from Two Bro Stage, Dr. Alex here, to chat about all things WPD, bodybuilding, her experiences, and how she sort of felt going from the Two Bro show and how it all went and everything like that. So, Dr. Alex, first off, tell us a bit about yourself. No pressure.
To clear up a few confusions, so I am British, I'm also Australian. So I was actually entered for the show as an Australian this time due to logistics. Um, Many people ask what's your PhD in, it's IT. I'm not a medical doctor, just to be clear. So I actually work professionally in a senior corporate technology role. Um, so I'm nothing to do with the medical community.
But you said before we hit record that you've got two
Mm.
PhDs. So that's a fucking achievement and a half, isn't it?
Yeah, the other one's business. That's also not medical.
No. But it's still, you know, you shouldn't downplay the fact that you've got that educational level because that's one hell of an achievement, not just to get one, but to then go on and get two
Yeah.
is, fantastic. So how long have you been competing for?
I've actually been competing for 7 years, which, as you know, in bodybuilding is not that long for a lot of people. And I'm very conscious that I'm competing in a community that's a lot of people that we're circulating with have been around a lot longer.
Yeah.
So,
That's the thing with
that's just reality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing about physique and those categories is there are much sort of ladies that have been in the industry for like 10, 20, 50, even more, like just because they've been experienced. Like the ladies that I've been around have been like 50 plus, so they've been on the scene for like 20, 30 years, just kind of muzzering around through because it's all they know and it's all they've done. And how the beauty of physique, I think, is because these ladies have so much experience. You're around so much experience that you can just kind of suck it up and move on to each show with that experience. It's crazy, really.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
It's
sorry, Mara, I was going to say
no,
also
no,
on the
you go.
timeline though, it's also about the sheer length of time it takes to build that, and that's life. I've been able to do this because I've been an athlete all my life, so I've built a lot of that muscle mass, muscle density anyway, just through doing other things. So
Yeah.
it's sort of reverse engineering for me. What I found hardest to learn, and anybody who's worked with me on this or vouch for it, is all the choreography and the posing because it was completely alien.
Yeah.
The only thing that was a help in that area was a big martial arts background because there are similarities there, but otherwise it was just from ground zero. But there is a lot to it. Once you start doing physique and certainly bodybuilding, the weights are only a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were telling us what you did before bodybuilding.
Yeah. So my background was, initially volleyball, followed by several years of pretty intensive martial arts, and then just a lot of general training, triathlon training when I first moved to Australia. So it all builds up. So I think that this is the other myth, is that bodybuilding is only from people who've been dedicated to bodybuilding. You actually can build up an awful lot through other activities and just being an athlete in other areas over a long
Yeah.
time.
So
Yeah. I
my background was CrossFit. I did about 10 years of CrossFit before bodybuilding. I've actually only been bodybuilding since it'll be 5 years in June from when I started my first prep. So it's like you don't this mindset that you have to be a bodybuilder from day dot. Actually, a lot of
Not
women,
true.
pardon?
It's just not true.
No, no, you can find it at any age. And actually, you know, for us older women, it's you through that you accumulate the muscle density in other ways.
Yeah. I mean, I also think if you start sport at a young age, you're installed to some sort of discipline, aren't you? Like that's all you kind of know. And like I was in athletics for a long time when I was younger, then I moved to soccer or football. And it's just, I think that's the best thing that people can do with young children nowadays is put them into sport because you have a level of discipline that you learn. You've got to wear a certain amount of kit. You've got to be at a place at a certain time, and it just kind of, that'll, get better and better as time progresses. And ultimately bodybuilding is 95% discipline and 5% the rest. And if you install that at a young age, then you can just develop it and get better throughout the years. So I think a lot of bodybuilders aren't bodybuilders straight off the bat. They've been through multiple sport situations before and they kind of just end up in it. Like look at Phil Heath, for example. He was a basketball player and then he just ended up in bodybuilding. So yeah, I think a lot of at least I would say at least 80% of bodybuilders have come from some other sport or background.
Yeah. No, I've noticed there's a lot of gymnasts, a lot of ex-gymnasts, because I'd also got that very early on as well. And it actually is an asset. So one of the myths I'd like to see start to disperse is to your point, Sarah, that you've got to be just a bodybuilder from day one.
Yeah.
It all contributes and it all helps to build your understanding of everything involved, the right mindset, and that it's accessible as well. So it's not about exclusivity. It's in addition to other things that you've done.
Yeah. I was crossfitting and bodybuilding for about 2 years before I knocked CrossFit on the head. And mainly that was because of lockdown. And then I turned pro. So it was like, well, I can't really be fucking off to do CrossFit every 5 minutes. Like, I can't do that now. And obviously lockdown put a kibosh on it anyway. So it kind of naturally fizzled out. But I did, much to my coach at the time's dismay, I was doing a CrossFit competition 2 weeks out from a show and things like that. She was like, what are you doing? But at the time, it was, I didn't know any better. And I actually found it quite complimentary because bodybuilding gave me the strength and stability for CrossFit. And then CrossFit gave me the metabolic conditioning, which helped bring the condition with when I was competing. So they actually married up quite nicely. I was having a conversation with my partner's brother the other week, who's a CrossFitter, and he was basically saying the same thing. It's like they have a lot of people that bodybuild that then want to join CrossFit, and a lot of CrossFitters that have come back into the gym saying, "Oh yeah, do you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this bodybuilding show as well." And I hate this attitude of, well, you have to pick one tribe. Well, you don't.
Yeah.
You can have multiple tribes if you want to. You can do multiple things. It's all dependent on your level and your sort of capacity to be able to do it and recover, really.
Yeah. I mean, I've drawn a lot on my martial arts background to get through some of the tougher preps because it's back to the mindset and just how you break it down, how you structure your training, other ways of doing things.
Yeah.
When I've hit those difficult points with bodybuilding, I've gone back to what I was doing in martial arts to look at just alternatives and alternative approaches, and it works. So it's a balance of the two. It's not about separateness and exclusivity.
Yeah. What sort of things do you find are helpful from alternative backgrounds when you're in those dark moments of prep?
And they are dark moments, aren't they? It's first and foremost knowing that you can get through it, that somehow you will get through it. It's as much the mindset and the mental approach I've taken with other things to get through them. And it all comes down to mindset. I mean, I've listened to a lot of podcasts over the last 6 months, and none of them have been bodybuilding podcasts. They've all been other disciplines. An athlete mindset is an athlete mindset at the end of the day, whatever you're doing. And I think we can all learn a lot from each other.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, bless him, Dan I think he was in Pure Gym at like 2 a.m. this morning because he couldn't sleep. It's like when we talk about dark days like that, I've never had that myself. I've had the waking up at 4 a.m. and I'll get up and I'll start my day then, and then maybe I'll have a nap. But I've never had such disturbed sleep that I found myself in a gym at silly o'clock in the morning.
That's probably an example for myself of where, because I've never had it with anything. I've always been able to be, it sounds pretty wild, but structured with sleep. If I know I've got to get X hours to do whatever the training is, there is a way of doing it. And again, it's a mindset approach that I learned in the years doing martial arts. And sometimes distraction is a way through. Even a lot of people may not agree with me on that, but find something you enjoy. When you're going through a difficult patch and you feel like you're not progressing, pick up something that you actually enjoy. So for me, that's the Budo, the Japanese Budo and weapons that I learned, because it's something that can flow. You're not pressured. It's flexibility. It's not bodybuilding per se, but it's still working on your physique and your mindset and the flow. And in the end, it does help with your choreography, even though it
Yeah.
appears a bit abstract. So it's application of other things you've done that will help in a completely different context.
Yeah.
I think that flow that you talk about was very reflective in your routine, because it was very, there was like a start, middle, end, rather than a succession of poses. And that was really lovely to see, because some people get in their head, I must hit a front relaxed,
Yeah.
or I must hit this X, Y, and Z, and then they don't really think about how they get there.
Yeah, it's the transitioning. It's all in the transitions, and that you're right. Actually, I hadn't quite thought of it that explicitly, but because we do kata in martial arts, in traditional martial arts, and they have to flow. There are very precise points that you've got to hit, just as we do with the specific technical bodybuilding poses, but it has to flow. So that's just ingrained in me because I've done that since I was 19, 20. So it's the challenge then is choreographing in a way that ties in whatever poses or whatever technicalities we want to land, but in a way that will flow fairly well as well.
Yeah.
And knowing that you can do it under pressure, because I mean, we all know it's one thing racing through short routines in the gym when you're not under pressure and you can stop and restart. It's a whole different ball game when you've got to do that live on stage in front of an audience and judges where you're being judged and live streamed all at the same time.
Yeah.
And getting that smooth is hard.
Yeah.
It's nice to see someone taking the time to focus on their routine, because like not long ago me and Romana were talking about posing, and I think posing is so important. And like some people say, oh, you know, the routines aren't judged, but it's still a display of your physique. You're still showing the judges that, you know, I'm a firm believer that, you know, I love super powerful routines. I like routines that emit some form of emotion from the crowd and yourself, and it's a way to connect to the judges and the crowd. As weird as that sounds, like, you know, you're out there being like, right, this is me, this is who I'm gonna show you a little bit of an insight into who I am as a person, my personality. And I think it's very important that people do take a lot of their prep time to put into their routine, because again, it's more stage time, more presence on the stage, more ability to show yourself to the judges. And I have spoken to judges before, and even though they're not directly judged, if it is as close as it could be between first and second, then they're going to look at the routine and be like, well, who actually, you know, displayed their physique in a much more pleasing way. Yes, like I said, it's not ultimately judged, but if it's that close, they're going to have to go to something, and it's most likely going to be the routine.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's also the creativity, because as an individual, it's a chance to be more creative with what we're doing as well, instead of just being stuck with a string of static poses, which, you know, once you've nailed them, you've nailed them.
Yeah.
It's a chance to be more creative and show what you can do with it. And that's individual.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
For me, trying to choreograph my routine is like, it's that little bit of mental reprieve from everything else in bodybuilding. It's like, it's a time where there's no pressure, there's no mental sort of strenuousness of concentrating on the rep, or trying to get through your cardio, or trying to ignore the hunger, or trying to pick yourself up from the energy. And then then you put life on top of prep, and it's, for me, it's like that time where actually I don't think of anything other than, how am I going to get from A to B and look good doing it? And that's all my focus. And I find it really refreshing to switch off in that way. Whether it comes up with anything good, I don't know. We'll find out in 6.5 weeks.
Yeah. I
But
mean, do you find, like, does it take you long to come up with a routine, or Alex, or you just kind of, or do you kind of just go with it and pick little bits up here and there and then go with it at the end?
it's a good question. I mean, I've had some that have come together really quickly. I've had help the last couple of years. I've actually got somebody to work with me. So um, Victoria Cales works with me.
Oh yeah.
She works with a lot of professional bodybuilders, and that's been really insightful because she's got a dance background. So it's a different it's a different way of thinking about it. So that she's been enormously helpful. But what I've done as the shows have gone on is adapted and added and moved things around, and because you do change, how you see things changes, how you feel changes, and what you're comfortable with doing. And also obviously over a 2-year period your body changes as well. So some of the poses that worked 2 years ago are not so great now, and vice versa.
Yeah.
There's other things that surprisingly do work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting, but it's also being confident to be creative with that, because it's not just that, it's not just one thing. It's a hybrid of many things, and the more I've gone into that, the more I see the potential, and I'm not sure many people have seen what opportunity that gives us as athletes, and performers. It's been fascinating watching Rachel Daniels in the States the last year or two, and what she's doing, because she's taken it to a whole other world altogether. It's
I mean,
phenomenal.
she speaks about bodybuilding as an art, and I think she very much sees it as an art over a sport or whatever else someone else might call it. But she's a beautiful performer, and obviously we had her on a while ago, and she's just such a down-to-earth person, and she opened up to us about her struggles as a bodybuilder, and then obviously her dance background and how it's helped her find herself. And I think, you know, I speak to a lot of people who have a dance background or who are really into choreographing things and doing routines, and their way of releasing or expressing emotion is through dance. Like Sammy Williams, who does a lot of my routines, you'll find that he'll just go off and dance or do routines for a day just because it helps him kind of understand what's going on with his mindset. And I'm sure he won't mind me saying that, but it's just, and sometimes even I find like Sammy's helped me to really delve into my mindset and think about, you know, actually it's okay just to go and bosh off some music and pose and just be one with that song. I mean, it sounds really silly, but like just going away and posing to a song, even if it's any good, it really clears your mind and sort of helps you feel at ease a little bit more than if you were just kind of sat at home dwindling, especially in prep, you might be a little bit more angry, a little bit more touchy. It's just good to go out and just bust some poses out. And it's amazing. And it's something that I found the more I've gone into my career is, you know, I can actually express more emotion through my routines and through just going and doing a bit of posing than just kind of, like I said, sat at home thinking that, you know, you're just tired. So it's a good way to go, and as well as practicing posing, go and just have a moment to yourself and just embrace what music brings, essentially.
Yeah, definitely. It's that, I think sometimes, especially in a prep, you're so right, on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing, ticking those boxes, that it's really easy to forget that time for yourself in whatever way, shape, or form that takes. You know, it might be playing Xbox, it might be reading, it might be walking, or it might be going into the studio and posing. You know, there's so many different things, but it's important to take that time. Otherwise, before you know it, you're like completely burnt out from just on the go constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, do you get nervous before doing your routine, Alex, or are you quite calm?
It's going to sound strange. I very, very rarely get stage nerves. And
Nice.
to the point that I've actually wondered why. And the only thing I can
Why?
put behind, if anything, I get incredibly nervous 2 or 3 weeks out, but by the time I get to stage, I'm just flatlined. And
Having seen you, obviously we competed together in 2020.
Yes.
And then saw you Saturday. Yeah, although you were telling me about all these nightmares that had happened leading up to Saturday, and you're there in the car park putting your nails on, and to speak to you in that moment, yeah, you were sort of rushing to put your nails on, but you were calm in yourself. And thinking back to 2020, you were very calm backstage then. And Sarah and I have had this conversation before where we've talked about how we differ. And I'm very much like you. I don't get the backstage nerves, whereas Sarah, you say you do. It's
I get horrendously nervous backstage. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think I'm not going to say anything further on that. I mean, for myself, I know I probably dealt with a lot of it very young growing up because I did classical music. So I was on stage doing classical music from, I think, 8.
Okay.
And that did definitely force me to deal with it, because it is incredibly confronting when you're out, whether it's as part of a small group, certainly solo, you just have to deal with it. There's no option. And I can consciously, I can clearly remember at that age doing a clarinet solo and having to deal with it. And I think this is back to what we were saying about alternative activities and sports. I think the more you can do, the more stage time you can get, and it doesn't matter what it is, the more performing time, it will all help.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you just get, because it's the same issue. You're out there in front of a huge audience, whether it's physically in front of you or now digitally, it's the same type of issue. So the more you can be out there and have dealt with that, however you deal with it in your mind, it doesn't matter. I've done that through music, probably also through martial arts as well, because gradings are not particularly fun. You just get used to it and find your own way of putting the right mindset in place and the right energy forwards and just focusing on what you're doing. But I think it's really important as a competitor that you do find your niche, your way of dealing with that, because it doesn't matter how much prep you do. If you're battling chronic stage nerves, you can screw up the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think having a support circle around you helps that as well massively. If you're kind of just very much around the wrong circle who it sort of installs negative feelings or thoughts or whatever, then they're basically people that are just going to affect how you're feeling overall. So I think having the circle as you run up to the stage makes a massive difference as well, for sure.
For me, nothing is as bad as standing for them to go 3, 2, 1, go on a CrossFit workout. Because like that is, and then the pressure I felt doing that is far exceeds bodybuilding, because in my head the way I deal with it is the hard work's done, now I've just got to show it off. Like I did all the hard work, I've been through the off season, I've been through the prep, now it's the time to go, this is what I've created during X amount of time. There's no, you have to perform imminently and you have to perform to a really high standard. Well, there is, but it's not that like heart in your mouth, I've got to lift that 100 kilograms or 60 kilograms or whatever. That part of it's done. So that's how I deal with it. But yeah, I don't know. I've never really had a support network when I've done a show. So I don't, it would be interesting when I do Toronto, because I actually will this time. I've always gone on my own.
Yeah,
So
I
how
must
many...
admit, I've generally done it alone as well, and it is a mixed bag. I think it can work either way. But the one thing, if I've ever even started with stage nerves, that I say to myself is they're not helping. It's not providing anything useful.
Doesn't serve you.
It doesn't serve you at all. Yeah.
Because how many shows have you done in total now, Alex?
Including including all the fitness modeling, 52.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was
that's amazing.
Today.
That's sick.
That's sick. That's good. That is good. And then kind of like if we move towards like women's physique and stuff like that, was women's physique and bodybuilding kind of like your main goal for the last like 2-3 years? When did you kind of look at women's physique?
Yeah, I mean, I ended up moving into physique quite early on. I think it was mid 2018.
Okay.
Because that was just more the natural fit. I think you'll understand this, Ramona, because you had the same transition, but trying to hold myself down in figure was just not working. So saw physique as my natural fit anyway. I think the surprise was that I could do the bodybuilding class reasonably well as well, and the posing is hard.
Yeah,
it's only when I started working on that, which was I think 18 months ago, that's like another level again. You think it can't be turned up any further, and it can. So and it's the nuances, but that I've not focused on anything other than physique since probably mid 2018 now, so that's 5 years.
Has it always been like an end goal for you? Like, have you always wanted to do women's physique?
No, I wasn't sure, because I started this late. I was 46 when I started. I had no clue, frankly, at that point, where I would fit in the whole scheme of things. It was just a case of start somewhere and see where you go. a few people said physique's probably your natural fit. And then gradually I've had comments to the effect of, yeah, you're probably bodybuilding,
Mm.
because it's just a lifetime of athletics that starts to play out in muscle density, structure, and so on. And why would you want to go backwards?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. If you can move up, might as well. And if you're happy to move up, you might as well. You know, no one wants to sit, like you said, no one wants to go backwards. They always want to move forwards. For sure. For sure.
I'm trying to think of somebody that's gone backwards and been successful with it.
I do actually think there's been many.
Yeah, there's probably, there will be some, but yeah.
Natasha,
Yeah.
wellness. Went
Oh
for
yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Would you consider that? Well, I suppose it is a little bit because you've got to downsize your upper, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's done very well from that.
Possible.
Yeah,
Possible.
but I can't.
Yeah.
I mean, my knowledge isn't extensive.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
But you're coached by Mads, aren't you, Alex?
I am now. Yeah, I've worked with Mads since December.
Yeah. How have you found it?
She's been brilliant, and it's been really refreshing because she's so detailed. That's a lot of what I've been missing, is just the meticulous detail. And I think especially with where the whole of bodybuilding's going, and I'm including the men as well in this, there's no avoiding the detail, and it's moved on so far from where I started in 2016 that the approach is different.
Yeah.
The approach 5-7 years ago was appropriate then, it's not appropriate now. I can see it only becoming more detailed as things go forwards, but Mads has been fantastic. And also just having a female coach has been great too.
Yeah. A lot of people have said that actually. It's like speaking to, I mean, I've just recently taken on a couple and they've said it's actually, I mean, this isn't us shitting on male coaches by many means, but I think,
considering we both have a male coach, we can't be shitting on it.
Exactly. Like, yeah. And it's just, but they've said, it's actually so refreshing to be able to talk about things with confidence, because some women might not want to talk about periods and stuff to their male coaches, and actually just being like, actually, Sarah, like this has happened. What do I do? And they're feeling much more confident in doing it. And I just think sometimes, that, like you said, the detail in everything bodybuilding nowadays is only increasing. And if you don't have a coach that's following every tiny little detail through your bodybuilding journey, then you're not going to be able to stand up against someone who's doing every single part that they can to be better than you are on stage, So yeah, I think a lot of females will gel much better with female coaches for sure.
But I'm also seeing a much bigger emphasis on health
Mm.
than when I started. Now that I don't know whether that's your view as well, but seems to be a general shift in focus on health, which is great. And I do believe it can be done. I've always believed it can be done, but the detail has to be there. You can't ride roughshod over any of the stages in prep.
No. And I think the thing about health and our awareness of it, and this shift from, well, you're a female, you're half the size of me, take half of what I'm taking, thankfully seems to be dying a death, because it's so dangerous. So dangerous.
The half boyfriend cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some shockers out there. Like we were talking about it the other day, weren't we, Zara? It's just like, yeah. So obviously you started bodybuilding 7 years ago. What made you take the plunge? What was the shift that led you to bodybuilding?
Yeah, another good question. It was shortly after I've moved back to the UK from Australia at that point. And I've been training pretty heavily for years anyway. I've never competed. I'd had people say for years you should compete. And I just said no. With what I'm doing professionally, I just can't see how this is going to work, quite frankly. But again, it's time. Things have moved on. And that point, it was a big shift in myself to say, well, you're not getting younger, just get on with it. Just see where it goes. You may do 1 or 2 and then not want to go near it again. But it was also a shift in mindset again, but getting rid of a lot of the mystique around bodybuilding and seeing what it really was, not what I had incorrectly perceived it to be from the outside.
Mm.
So that took a while as well.
I
But
can relate to that.
yeah,
I remember when I moved back down to Dorset and I was training in a gym over in Bournemouth, and some people there were saying, "Oh, you should compete, you should compete." And I'm like, "You've got to be joking. I'm not standing on stage in a thong, painted bright orange. That's not
exactly.
me." Fast
Yeah,
forward 18 months later, I'm standing on stage, bright
yeah,
orange in a
yeah,
thong,
exactly. Yeah, no,
and never
that was
look back.
exactly it. I mean, you know, when I was first approached, I think it was 2009, and a couple of people said, "Look, we just need to spray you up and send you on," you know, because how heavily I was training at that point. And I thought, there's just no way professionally I can possibly be up there in a blingy bikini and then off doing the job I'm doing. It's just not going to work. Um, and I just still wonder how much of that holds people back, believe it or not.
Mm. Mm.
It's something I've had to consider as well. Like there was that mental battle of, on the one hand, I'm I've got this professional responsibility. Should I really be posting photos of me in a bikini on a weekly basis on my Instagram? And it's like, well, they're two separate entities, and actually one can make the other entity better. Like the dedication towards bodybuilding then transfers. If you're dedicated, you're dedicated, and that
Yes.
transfers to every aspect of your life. And actually, it's more about the people putting those judgments on you. They're the ones with the
Yeah.
problems, not you doing what you want to do, what makes you happy with your time off when you're not at work. Otherwise, what's the point in living if you're just a slave to your job all the time?
Yeah. And how did you find working the career that you do, Alex, with your prep and bodybuilding? Did you find that being in prep made your career harder to focus on, or did you just kind of go like, right, I'm in prep, but my career doesn't suffer?
I've always managed to balance the whole
Nice.
thing, but knowing that prep periods are going to be tough, and you do have to be realistic. It is going to be tough. I've seen a couple of Insta posts this week with people talking about the reality of how tiring prep is if
Yeah.
you're serious, and that is something you do need to factor in. So some of it's been hard, honestly, and I'm not going to say it hasn't. It really
Yeah.
hard at times, and you certainly can't be doing business travel while you're on prep. It's just not an option. Um, but your time management has got to be meticulous, and that's been the key to getting through it is time management. Get yourself as organised as you possibly can within reason. Um, it is doable, but it's not easy.
Yeah, and I think that's a problem a lot with social media nowadays is you have like, I mean, it's good to see everyone wanting to get on stage and wanting to put themselves through prep or dieting or whatever, but a lot of people don't talk about the hardships of prep, and realistically, like the prep is the hardest thing you'll go through, and it really does test you mentally and physically, and even more so mentally. And it's so important that people do like put on social media the highs and the lows of everything, because then it makes things more relatable, because it's not all unicorns and rainbows. We go on stage for 5 minutes smiley because we've done the work, but 90% of that prep has been in the trenches. I mean, I hate that term, but it's it is very important to be like, actually, what, I am struggling, but I'm thinking of this end goal. I'm thinking about what I want to achieve this year in prep, and this is why I'm doing it. And a lot of people just want to get on stage for gratification from social media and stuff like that. And I personally think that's a wrong way to go about things, because then they get hit with the reality that prep is really hard, and you do have to be a certain person, in my opinion, and a certain mindset to be able to get through it and find ways of getting through the hard days. Because some days you don't want to do anything, you don't want to, you don't want to move, you don't want to have to go new steps, you don't want to train. But when you think, actually, I want to get to the Olympia, the person on the other side is doing more, that they're already working, so I need to do the same. So I think it's very important that people do talk about the hardships and the highs of prep and competing and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like the amount of prep nightmares I've had. I was actually talking about this yesterday, because somebody that was on prep sent me a photo of where they put tea bags in the washing machine. And I was like, I see your tea bags, and I raise you putting petrol in my diesel camper van and driving it 20 miles with it stalling every time I had to change into second. And it wasn't until a few hours later that I was like, I know what I did. I picked up the green handle and not the black handle, and I put 20 quid worth in. Oh.
Have you done anything like that, Alex, where you've been like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, like prep brain star stuff?
There's been a couple of close.
My crowning moment was forgetting that when my insurance policy was lapsing and I was looking for new insurance, and I got pulled over after a 12-hour night shift that I was 2.5 hours late off and got done for not having any insurance, 6 points and a 300 quid fine.
Oh, fucking
Like,
hell. Jesus. Only you would be able to do that, Romana.
well, the thing was, and when they said to me, what happened? Why didn't you renew your insurance? I didn't think to say. It was right after I turned pro as well. I didn't think
Yeah.
to say why. And the guy, like, they had to like drive me home in my car because I wasn't allowed to drive it. And the copper, we were talking about training, but I just did not mention it. Oh yeah, I've done a 20-week prep where I reduced my body fat to unfunctionable levels. That's why I forgot to pay my insurance.
Yeah. Wow. Here you are.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh dear. So you mentioned that you came from, obviously you came from Australia, then hit the UK and kind of hit bodybuilding a little bit harder. Did you have any kind of like, what is the bodybuilding scene in Oz, if there is any? Like, is there much of a bodybuilding scene over there compared to over here, or?
Reason it's a different circuit. I mean, the Australia's got its own organisation, its own AFBB, and it is a big scene. I came back to the UK because, firstly, I'm British. I've competed over here a lot. I haven't competed down there, and just for this year, wanted the familiarity of not moving into another whole new circuit.
Yeah.
Would that require different posing as well? Are they different to NPC and IFBB, or are they quite similar? Because obviously over here, PCA is really quite different to NPC and IFBB, and I know PCA Australia is quite big over there. Are there differences in the posing?
I'm going to say I don't know, to be really honest, because I've not got involved in it. From what I can see, they're going to be broadly similar. There's probably going to be nuances, but it's another circuit. It's another set of people, another whole group, and but it is big.
I've heard that like lifestyle and stuff is bodybuilding lifestyle is quite big out there, and stuff like that. So it's good to know. It's good to know. It's good to see that there's more sort of like bodybuilding areas around the world that kind of push it and live that lifestyle, because it's, like you said, there's only certain people that like to live a bodybuilding lifestyle with competitiveness in as part of it. But yeah, I've heard some of the gyms over there are nutty good.
Yeah, it's mixed, but it's a sporting nation. I mean, it just is. So it pretty much doesn't matter what your sport is. It's just a big thing. And the mainstream sports are enormous. Hence, bodybuilding follows that because it's a supporting piece of what a lot of the others do.
Yeah.
But I think getting involved competitively is, it's a choice. Do you stick with your existing circuit? Do you join a new one? I wanted to continue with the European circuit because it's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Sure. And obviously you competed Saturday just gone. It was Saturday, wasn't it? I was voice noting Sarah earlier and I was like,
yeah, Saturday. All the days like merge into one after a while, don't they?
Yeah. How did you find the show? How do you feel about the show? How did it go?
The show went well. I mean, it was very, very well organized and run. For me personally, it felt very formal, because I had to run meticulously through absolutely everything on stage. There was no shortcuts. In fact, it almost reminded me of an exam, which I'm going to say is a good thing because it does keep you on your toes. And I know the question of being the only person in a class comes up with this, but I think for me, it actually puts more pressure on you because you have to show up in the true sense of it. There's no sort of, oh, well, I'll, ease off on things or back off on something knowing that you're going to get placed anyway. That's not the mindset. We are there to do the best we can on the day. And I think when you're there on your own, you have to really do the best you
Sure.
possibly can, because you're doing a disservice to everybody involved in the event if you don't.
That's a really good way of thinking about it, actually, because one of the things we were sort of talking about, and I think I mentioned it to you before we started recording this, was would you, and I don't feel there's any right or wrong answer to this, it's just a discussion. Would you, as a competitor, want to know if you're going to be the only person in that category so that you could potentially, I know it's a bit different for you because obviously you're traveling to the UK, but if you took that out of the equation, would you want to know prior to have the opportunity to adjust your show dates if that was possible? Or would you prefer not to know and just sort of have the cards you're dealt with kind of thing?
Personally, I would rather just take the cards I'm dealt on the day. But
Yeah.
that's a personal thing. I can also, though, fully understand why some people would prefer to know in advance and move things around. I prefer to let the chips fall where they do based on that decision and just deal with it. I mean, the way I've looked at our classes for the last couple of years is, particularly in the UK, there's not many of us. So you're likely to be one of a few on stage anyway. And it is what it is. That's what it is competing
Yeah.
in. Yeah. So it's not going to whether you the only one of 2, 10, or 20. I actually now feel shouldn't matter, because if you're putting your best foot forward and you've done your prep properly, you should be showing up with your best physique regardless.
Yeah. It's very true. It's very true. I wonder if, I mean, for me personally, I would be the similar to you. I don't think I'd want to know because I think actually the stress of changing a show day
Yes.
would just rocket everything. And it wouldn't work well for me. I wonder if, do you feel the same, Sarah, or would you want to know?
Yeah, I would rather just go for it. I've already
Yeah.
once I've made up my mind, I'm doing that. So I'd much rather, instead of being like, oh, let's not do this, let's do this. Like back when COVID was around and like there was some shows that I was going to go for, like I was going to do, I think probably the same show. Did you compete in COVID, Ro? Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think I was gonna go for that show and then I didn't, and my mental health just got really affected because I didn't have that clear pathway to what goal at what stage what show I was gonna do. So I'd rather just be like, right, gonna do this show, don't care if anyone turns up, I'm gonna do it anyway regardless, because one, it's stage time, like you said, Alex, is good practice, and even more so if you're the only one there. And it just puts a little bit more pressure on you, and when you have people up there on stage with you, then you're going to be like, oh, it's a little bit easier because I've already been in this situation before. I'm a little bit more experienced because I was on stage a couple more times this year. And yeah, I'd just go for it, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think,
and you've made another point there as well, Sarah, because it's stage time and there's
yeah,
no substitute for a live stage and dealing with that and
Yeah.
dealing with the reality of being judged by live judges and the audience. And the more of that you can do, the better, the less
Yeah.
you get affected by everything that can affect it. In fact, Ramona and I met at a show during COVID. It
yeah,
was that, yeah, it was one of the first shows when things were just about getting back on their feet before we got locked down again. And I know that for me, the way I showed up that day wasn't my best, but it was the best I could do given COVID. And I'm
yeah,
still really glad I did it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think the condition I brought was really, really good, but the progression because of lockdown wasn't what I would have wanted,
Yeah.
having had, if we'd had the opportunity to train like we could normally. Yeah, that was a year, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, oh
It
God,
was.
no. I think the only time that it would be like more upsetting is if you're going for a pro card and there's no one there. Like
Yeah.
the year I turned pro, if if there wasn't enough girls, I would have been absolutely gutted. I would have accepted it because it's just, not the time or the place to get it. But because I was so, in my head, I wanted the pro card so bad that luckily I had the same amount of women there. But if I hadn't, I think it would have been a bit of a knock. Yes, we probably would have gone abroad to somewhere else, but equally, you know, I want to get the pro card on my home soil before I have
Yeah.
to start traveling everywhere else, because there's no pro shows in the UK, so we have to travel anyway. But to get a pro card on home soil is just something that was like nice cherry on top of the season. But ultimately, if any other show, I think I would have been like, well, nah, I'd much rather gain the stage time.
I suppose now the other level of it is that it doesn't matter how many people turn up on stage, because if you're at a pro qualifier, like, is it Amy Meredith?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, I did message her, but she never got back. But she was, you know, she won the Benwida, and unfortunately there were only, I think it was only 2 in the overall, because one of the figure athletes was beginner or novice, so she didn't go into the overall.
Yeah.
But Amy does have the ability to send off her stage photos to the IFBB and ask if she can acquire her pro card through that way.
Exactly.
Whether they will or not, we don't know. But
Yeah.
at least there's that option now. It's not that's it, which I think,
Yeah.
given the uptake of the more muscular female categories and even some of the more muscular male categories, to be honest, I think that's a nice sort of buffer safety net.
Yeah, for sure.
That
It's fair, and I'm in the same position, so I'm
Of
going to be
course,
doing
yeah.
the same. Yeah, and again, it comes back to, does it really matter how many are on stage? It doesn't. You know, you just keep going. I mean, whether you do or you don't get your pro card, we're going to carry on training.
Yeah.
It's, you know, this is the other thing. It's a step along the way. It's not the be all and end all.
No.
Yeah, everybody wants one, but that's just being realistic about it as well. And whether I do or don't get awarded, you know, who knows? But
Yeah.
So
you continue training.
are you submitting? Are you going to
Nice. That's exciting.
fingers crossed? You'll have to let us know how that goes.
Yeah.
Um So I think having been at the Two Bros show, my only thing about it was the bright yellow background.
Oh,
that was a lot to look at all day. And slightly disappointing that they didn't change they kept there was like a million WPD categories because they didn't change the wording, and then they were posting that on Instagram as well, so when it was actually figure competitors on stage.
oh
But
no.
otherwise, I think, given our experience in 2020, where as WPD competitors, I don't know about you, but I got back to my car at about 12:30,
Yes.
midnight.
Yes.
Like, that was just insane. So
Yeah.
the fact that they've now got their timing nailed down and the shows are running on time and are like that kind of examish, I'd rather have that than the uncertainty of, oh, I'm not going on stage until like 10:30. What?
Yeah.
What?
I know. I remember that show. I remember doing my physique routine at 11:30 p.m.
Yeah.
Why were you on so late?
I don't think the show started until like midday or something, did it?
Yeah.
I think it was
Oh,
quite
was a
late.
start. Yeah.
And then because it was lockdown, you had every bikini competitor and their mother competing. So, and they
Yeah.
did bikini first.
Oh, that's strange.
So it was bikini, wellness, figure, physique, bodybuilding. Tonks was like, she must have got off stage at like 2 a.m. or something crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, yeah. So to have them actually get their scheduling sorted is really refreshing.
To be
Yeah.
fair, it did run so much smoother this weekend. Like last year, it was a little bit up and down, but this year it was like, I mean, the men were on and off, and then classic lads. It ran so much better, and the MC was so much better this year. Like a little bit more involved. Like, not saying Ian's a bad MC, but I think to actually have someone who is a little bit more like upbeat and a little bit more with it, and obviously this MC had been kind of around the like American bodybuilding scene as well, and then to have a guest poser, and it just gives it a little bit more feel.
Samson was phenomenal.
Mad, wasn't he? Yeah, and I just think that's what's lacking in the UK is this community of bodybuilders. I mean, you have the men, you have like Hollingshead and Samson, but with the women, I mean, when I was over in the States, they kind of said, you know, what's the community like? And I was like, well, we don't really have one because, you know, I mean, I said to someone asked me again the other day, I was like, oh, so I just kind of assumed you knew all the women's physique competitors in the UK. And I was like, well, to be honest, like I know a handful and that's it. Like I mentioned you, Romana, and then that's it. Gemma Lancaster at a push, but I don't know her personally. So it's like we need to kind of move things towards having a community and being a part of community, like whether that be women's physique, figure, bodybuilding, or anyone. It's just like try and support each other. Like when I go to compete in Texas, there's quite a few of us going, like Amanda Winston's doing Texas and stuff like that. So it's nice to have a UK team going, because it shows that actually, yes, we're UK, but we're actually, our bodybuilding scene is growing and we're bringing out some monsters. So kind of look out for us, you know, because a lot of people aren't expecting it, because we're very, very much a quiet country when it comes to bodybuilding.
Yeah, but it's the support work. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. It's the support network that matters. And it doesn't matter what class we're doing, you know, whether it's figure, physique, bodybuilding. It really doesn't matter at this stage. It's more important to build the network, build the community.
Yes.
And know that, I think particularly during prep, you're not just out there on your own, because we've all done it, and it's not great if you've not got that support network around you in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, for sure. Or people that understand. So like, you know, if you're having one of those harder days and you just want to sit in the company of people, but you don't want to talk, like that's a big one. Is like, if I say go to Tom's when I'm 2 weeks out, I kind of just want to sit in a different environment, but just not talk. And it's having the understanding of people that are like, you know what, actually just leave her alone. She's fine. She's not being rude or anything. She just is too tired. I think that's really important, because people that don't understand what you're going through at the time, obviously we put ourselves through it. It's, you know, it's no one else's fault. It's our own if you're looking at it to be a fault. But like, it, you know, it's nothing worse than having someone that's like, oh, you have to talk, why are you being sick, why aren't you eating this, blah blah blah, because that's just stressful. So just having a community of people that understand and are going through something similar or have been through the same thing is so important. And I say that to my clients, I say that to everyone, like create an environment that's only going to push you further instead of like just pull you back, because you know you're a product of the environment that you put yourself in. And if you can make that environment one that's going to push you further, then just stay in that environment, no matter whether that be 2-3 people instead of 20 people that are going to pull you back. Have that circle, have that environment, and just thrive within it. It's really important.
Yeah, there are always the silent moments in prep.
Yeah,
it's like that energy to talk. It's like
yes.
And I'm like thinking I've got all that to come, but like the other half, you won't mind me saying, like the last time he tried to do a prep, he was with his ex-partner and he pulled the plug on that prep because there wasn't that support there. She didn't understand, and she was trying to get him to do things that he didn't have the energy for. And that confliction internally of, well, I want to please the person that I'm with, but I also need to please myself. So he'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm quiet. It's just low energy. It's like, you don't need to explain it, because in a few weeks, I'm going to be there with you. But equally, I've been through it X amount of times before, so I know what it's like. And it's fine. It's absolute. And to be comfortable in silence with somebody, I think is like, you know, that's the definition of a comfortable relationship, to just sit there and not say anything if you need to.
Yeah, for sure. So Alex, what's your plans going forward then? Obviously you've submitted your application for a pro card. Are you competing anymore this year, or just kind of seeing how it goes?
Yeah, I'm not planning to compete again. I really want a long phase now, just training.
Yeah.
And just continuing training basically. I'm not in a rush to get back on stage, full stop.
Yeah.
So it is, Sarah, it's just see how it goes. If
I think that's important, is to kind of just be like, all right, I've done my competitive part of this year, apply for my pro card, and let's just kind of see what happens. So many women, or just people in general, don't have an off season that is lengthy or a good amount of time to get health markers back in check, have some time off, you know, actually just switch off for 5 minutes. It's just so important. You see a lot of young ladies have like a 3-month off season and then want to get back on stage, when realistically, if you've been on cycle or been using PEDs or whatever, your body isn't functioning or isn't as healthy as it could be if you had a longer off season. So it's good to hear that, you know, you're willing to just have a nice long off season, improving, enjoying training, just getting food back, health markers perfect again, and just being like, you know what, the stage will be there when I'm ready to step back on stage again. That's really good to hear.
I think
so many
people. Is an upside of, sorry.
No, you go.
For me, this is the upside of having done so many shows early on. I've got that competing obsession done. It's gone. It's pointless. there's no rush in me to get back on stage. I enjoy training. It's part of my life. I know very, very well, especially at this age, I really need longer off seasons. So getting back on stage too quickly is damaging anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I'd be perfectly happy at the moment. If pro card comes through, I mean, I'm looking at probably 2 years off stage.
Yeah.
If that's the scenario. I mean, if not, then maybe it's different. But even then, I'm not in a rush to get back on stage. It's much more important, as you say, Sarah, to get all your health markers exactly back on track. I mean, I'm in a good place now. There's nothing that's really off track, frankly.
Yeah.
But just to build the physique, it
yeah,
can't be done when you're constantly in prep, and we all know that.
it's just a shame that some people feel the need to rush the process and to get
Yeah.
back on stage year after year after year with that minimal off season. And I think it's also important to add that regardless of whether you use performance enhancers or not, as a female, getting yourself to stage ready body fat levels, you need that time for your body to recover,
Yeah.
regardless of whether you use performance enhancers or not. If you're natural, if you're bikini, all the way up to bodybuilding, as a female, you need to get that body fat back on to
Yeah.
to return homeostasis to doing what it should be doing. Otherwise, you're going to end up in with problems later down the line if you just continue this cycle.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure. So do we want to answer, we had was it a question from Joy, a couple of questions from Joy to answer?
So I've got one first.
Yeah.
So what do you think, what have you learned through your time of bodybuilding
Oh,
that
wow.
sort of stands out?
Oh, I was thinking actually on Sunday after the show, bodybuilding is one of the biggest mirrors life can hold up to you. And I don't mean physically. You know, so many of conceptions and ideas about things get churned through, I think, in the process. I think the biggest one for me has been patience. And you know, this is back to the competing point. You've got to be patient with yourself, with the process, and just accept this stuff takes time, and that's being polite. It takes a hell of a long time, and the further on you're going, if certainly, you know, as we all know, if you're doing physique or bodybuilding, it's a really long time. You can't rush it. You just can't. So I would say patience and just accepting that as well. And that filters into a lot of other things in life where I know I would have been making decisions, general life decisions, differently 7 or 8 years ago. There's much more of an acceptance for me that you've got to trust. The consistency is way more important than I suspect many people realize. There's no shortcut for that either.
No.
And it's also learning, I think, to bring in other things from your life. And this is particular for me the last 2 years and 12 months. I've had to integrate back in a lot of my martial arts training to get the balance in different areas, whether it's morning stretching and warm-ups, you know, whether it's that, as you said, Romana, it's finding the things that just give you that quiet time, the headspace away from all the tick list of stuff you've just got to do. And that's different for everybody, but bringing it positively as well. You know, I'm wondering now how I can bring more of that in, rules aside. And so it's a constant learning, and I think it's this might sound a bit abstract, but it's accepting that it is a constant learning of different things as well. I've seen some pretty good analogies floating around Insta lately as well. You know, it's what you let go of, it's what you get rid of
Yeah.
in the process as much as what you gain, and it really is.
Yeah.
That the more you can stay focused on what you're trying to do and not get caught up with other things, and then apply it through the rest of your life. So it's just continual learning.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
No, I like
Yeah.
that.
I think it's that you've got to be almost sort of evolutionary and sort of dynamic at the same time with your approach to it. It's like
Yeah.
what might have worked one prep or one off season doesn't mean it's going to be the same next year.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and my biggest thing is remembering that feelings are transient, and that energy low, that hunger, that fatigue, that like I just want to curl up in a ball and cry, it will pass. You know, they will pass and you'll feel better. You've just got to ride it out in that moment.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What was the other question you had, Ro?
Okay, so the person asking the question, Joy, said, so I got told that everyone cheats on prep. Do you think this is true for a first start? And then, is this a male female thing where men are more likely to cheat on their prep? So I think first off is, do you think everyone cheats on prep, and have you ever cheated on prep?
Can we define cheating?
Well, this is it, because we talked this through a little bit before you joined us.
Yeah.
And I'll explain my experience. So I don't, when I first started competing, I lived with my mum, and we talked about like trying to explain it to some people, and she just wouldn't get it. So I'd have to adjust my macros during the day so I could eat a home cooked meal with her.
Yeah.
But I didn't consider it cheating because it wasn't for the gratification of the food. It was to make my life easier by not explaining to my mum why I'm eating chicken and rice again.
Yeah.
So in my head, it wasn't like I went and binged. It was different.
Yeah.
But whether you'd still consider that cheating.
I mean, the word
one I
cheating.
wouldn't. But I mean, for me, I can honestly say no. It's just, for me, it doesn't work.
No.
You know, if you're on prep and that's the plan, you execute the plan and deal with it.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same sort of mindset as what we talked about earlier with shifting show dates.
Yeah.
I just think you're setting yourself up for a hell of a headache if you start
Yeah.
moving show dates. It's just too hard. If you're working closely with a coach, it's not just you that's adjusting, it's everybody that's working with you as well. It just doesn't work. Once that date is locked in, you've got to run with.
Yeah. I think you said run with that. You just cut out a little bit. Because the only other time where I have cheated was because I had a job interview, and I ended up and I was explaining to Sarah. So I had an interview at like 10 a.m. and then I had a night shift later on that day, and it was in between Poland and Bulgaria pro shows, and I needed the job. So I did have extra carbs, but they were clean carbs before my interview. But the problem I had was at the time I was coached by somebody who wouldn't have necessarily been very mentally dynamic to what I would have suggested. So I just didn't tell him, because it was like that conversation wouldn't have worked because of their mindset. But sometimes, regardless of whether you're a pro or an amateur, sometimes life happens and you have to adapt to the situation, which may not necessarily be towards your competing goal, but it's maybe because it's in view of the greater good towards another goal. So progression of career, progression of bodybuilding, they both need to happen. And sometimes one has to give for the other.
Plus, as well, if you're a good enough coach, you can adapt to whatever situations occurred. Like my missus is a goalkeeping coach, and she has to adapt things so much more because obviously it's a much quicker situation, much quicker game scenario. And as a coach, like if someone said, I have a massive interview that is literally going to make or break my career, I need to have a little bit more food. Then as a coach, you would just manipulate the day around, manipulate the week, and then you have it, there you have it. It's not like necessarily being like, oh, I need some extra food. Like, right, okay, so let's just move this meal here, that meal there. Like it's so important that their coach understands the situation, because bodybuilding is amazing, but realistically, especially as women, we're not earning hundreds of thousands to live off of. We need something outside of bodybuilding to help pay for our bodybuilding, you know, like even as professionals, we're not earning nearly really anything. We're just purely doing it because we love it. So we need to be able to split between, right, I'm doing my bodybuilding, but I also have this massive interview that I need to do that's going to help me pursue more bodybuilding, because that's going to pay for my flights and everything to do so. So as a coach, like as seeing other coaches, it is so important to to be able to adapt to the situation and help that athlete in not only achieving their bodybuilding goals, but also their lifestyle goals and their career goals as well. Because that's, that's what we are here for. Yes, we, if you wanted to do a show, then yeah, let's go and do a show. But I also want you to develop in other areas of your lifestyle, because if you can take what you learn from bodybuilding, like you were saying earlier, Alex, like bodybuilding teaches us mental resilience. And if we can have mental resilience in other aspects of our life, then they're all going to come up, because you can learn, and you're willing to learn more because you have learned so much from how far you can push yourself in prep. And that's something I've learned, is I can push my mind and body so much further than I ever thought I could in times where things have really got rough. And I push them into other aspects of my life, like, like my training. Like, I know I can push myself so much further than I ever thought I could. And I think it's very important that people who go through prep also apply that to other areas of their lifestyle, because a lot of people have said, bodybuilding shouldn't be your only thing. You should also have the capability to go into other areas, because we all love bodybuilding. Yes, it is a massive part of our lives, but what are we going to do when bodybuilding's not there? We can't bodybuild forever, especially as women. You know what I mean? Like,
what are you talking about? Yes, we can.
It's my dream. So yeah, so you need to have that career. You need to have something to fall back on. So I think, yeah, I mean, it's very important to be able to have that adaptability as an athlete and as a coach, to make sure that you are providing the support in both bodybuilding and lifestyle choices and career choices. I think that's very important.
Also, now working with Tom, I know I could have that conversation and be like, dude, this is happening. We need to, and it would be an easy conversation to have. It was just unfortunate at the time I didn't feel I could have that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
That's it.
What about the other one, the male versus female?
Oh, yes. And is this a male-female thing where men are more likely to cheat on their prep?
I think, like we were saying earlier, Ro, like, I think, this isn't me being sexist at all, but speaking to multiple coaches, I think men tend to be a bit more, I think we do this and this, whereas a woman just tends to just get on with it. So like we were saying, Ro, when a guy maybe think he's a little bit flat when he's not actually flat, and he asks for a refeed and his coach is like, no, you're just being picky. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I have a couple clients, the lady that actually asked that question, Joy, you do anything, she'll just follow it. No questions asked, just gets on with it. And that is, for me, someone who would just listen. Just, I'll do the thinking, you just do the doing. And I think I've seen that a lot more in a lot of my female clients over my male clients. And I think a lot of people are the same. And that's not me saying that males don't have it, but because obviously they can, but I've heard a lot more whining from males than females.
I don't know, because like I haven't really got, I don't know. I'm trying to think of who I've been around male versus female wise on a prep. But then there's also the, do you wouldn't necessarily know.
Yeah. I mean, that's a massive umbrella. I mean, I've only really come across it like once or twice. Like that's, it's not like me being like, oh, every male, but that's just kind of like, and I wouldn't say every person's like that. It's maybe like 1 out of 200 people that are like that,
No, and I think it's also back to how do you define cheating? Because replanning is one thing. That's not cheating in my mind.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I think anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think females can just take more pain and take more suffering,
Well, you think biologically, we're kind of geared up to do something that is painfully,
it's just inherently painful.
Never been through it, so I don't know, but I hear it's pretty bad.
Yes.
So
vouch for it. Yes.
Right. So
the thing that, like, being in the medical profession, a lot of the time meant, passing a kidney stone's like, the male version of having a baby. I'm like, it's still not a watermelon. If you've got a kidney stone the size of a watermelon, then yes, it's comparable. But otherwise, it's not really. Yeah. And women get kidney stones too. So.
Oh dear. So yeah, that's pretty much all our questions, wasn't it, Ro?
Yeah.
I didn't actually get any more, so I think they went straight to our women with WPD page.
Yeah, I did check it, but I think I put it up a little bit too late, to be honest, because
that's right.
Yeah, life happens, unfortunately. But thank you very, very much for joining us this evening.
you.
before
Thank
you
for having me.
fly back to Australia. And just, I'm going to see if I can get this to work, just so people can see. This is Alex's Instagram page, and I friggin' love that photo. It's just brilliant, really, really like it. So over on Instagram, I'm not going to try and butcher your surname, but that's her Instagram for those watching on YouTube. Those that aren't, sorry.
Yeah, you gotta go and
But
watch YouTube. That's it. It's just straight
yeah.
up.
And
Yeah.
that's the last little bit, Sarah.
Yeah, pretty much. So thank you for following. Thank you for obviously the support. We appreciate it massively. Just remember to like, share, subscribe our YouTube channel, and
Ring the bell. Sorry.
love
We're
it.
so
You
professional with this, Alex,
Yeah,
aren't we?
obviously give us a follow on Instagram as well. But we're trying to release a sort of a podcast every week now, aren't we, Ro? Obviously,
Yeah.
now you're getting deeper into prep. It might be a little bit wiggledy-piggledy, but we'll try and it'll be fine. Yeah, but we'll try and do our best to get one up weekly now. Now we're kind of in the routine of things. But as always, guys, if you need anything, message us on the Instagram page or DM us at smallbutmighty20. And yours is just Romana Scott's and IFBB Pro, isn't it?
Yeah. Mine's just
Or just follow
And
the Instagram page.
we forgot to say Kelly's not here because she got COVID for the third time.
Yeah.
Or
Welcome,
second
Kelly.
time. I've lost count.
No,
But she will be
fair
back
play.
in full force, hopefully. Maybe not for the next one, which is hopefully going to be Mads, your coach, Alex. But she will be back once she's feeling a bit better.
Yeah.
But cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, and we'll catch you later.
Bye.